Hi, Richie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, everyone. And welcome to What, Where, Why? Enemies of Bloodborne, episode 48. Today, we're going to talk about the patience from the Hunter's Nightmare, recommended by Idalex.
Thank you, Idalex.
So, Richie, before we started recording this podcast, I asked you about which patient we should talk about specifically, because there's a couple of them, and we decided to just talk about all of them. Yeah.
So, should we explain what that means? Because people might
Yeah,
I think it's an area people run through and don't really hang around. So, there's a whole lot of different kinds of clock tower patient. And you might think, oh, it's like the church servants or something where it's just the same thing, but like sometimes they have a gun and sometimes they have a stick. But they actually do like behave differently. They have like they drop different things. Some of them are affected by items differently. So they are kind of different. Yeah. Okay.
In the what, I would like you to tell me very generally, what are they?
Okay, so the patients are people who were brought to the healing church to be healed. As in, like, this is back when they thought the healing church was just like a hospital that you went to if you were sick. And what happens is that they would start healing them, but also experimenting on them. In that, what we know of as like the recovery room, like in the DLC, just before you go up the elevator, there's like all those beds lined up. So they would treat them there, and then if one of them started to show that they were contacting the Great Ones or their like body was changing or something, they would take them up that elevator into the research hall and continue the experiments there.
Richie?
Yeah.
So this happens to me every couple of months, and it just happened now again. The healing church literally has the word healing in it.
Yeah.
As if they're gonna heal people.
Yeah, you got it.
I got it. Oh man.
Yeah, it was spent a lot of time with the consultants to come up with that brand.
The healing church. We will definitely not turn you into some weird monsters with the old blood church was their second choice. And we talked about Laurence and his inability to do proper research a couple of times.
Yeah.
So this is literally him telling people that if you're sick, come to us, we will heal you. But is this before or after the plague breaks out?
It's just before, because you can see them starting to create the plague in there.
Right. Okay.
So this is like just after the healing church show up. And he's like, if you're sick, come here, we'll heal you. And it's like, oh no, we had to take you to the back room to heal you even better. Oh, they won't be coming back. Unfortunately, they passed away. Can we see the body? No.
Oh my god. It's like, you don't think about this when you play through the game, right? But it's very horrible.
No, I'd say you notice it when you play through the game, because there's a giant hospital full of people fucking strapped to bed, struggling and screaming, "Please kill me!"
I guess.
Yeah.
No, but what I mean is, like, I don't know. For me, at least, the first time you play through Bloodborne, there's so much going on. You don't necessarily put everything together, you know?
Yeah.
But Laurence is really shady. It's a really sketchy character.
I know that, like, it's like, oh, you don't put everything together, which to most people is like, oh, you don't realize, like, the exact relationship between, you know, Canehurst and the Chalice Dungeons, and you don't realize that, like, you know, it was Dura who was responsible for the burning of Old Yarnum, and that's connected to, like, the chalice that's in the thing. And you're like, you don't notice that Laurence goes, he's a little shady. And the healing church has healing in its name.
Thank you, Richie.
You don't notice that the people strapped to the bed screaming, "Please kill me before I go mad." It's a little dark.
Thank you.
This reminds me of when you watched The Hitcher and you were like, and then I discovered the Hitcher was the bad guy.
Thank you, Richie.
Continue.
Okay, so now I think we can talk about what the patients look like and the different type of patients we encounter in the research hall.
I'm just remembering the time you told me that I had to set up my own lab and you would come and work for me, and I said, what would be at the lab? And you said snacks. And it turned out that your description of the lab was actually a buffet. Is that what you thought the healing church did?
The snack church.
You work in a lab, so your idea of the healing church is that you're making manuals all day doing literature reviews.
And eat snacks. Listen,
Yeah.
in my lab, all the research assistants love food. So we just bring snacks every day and we just snack all day long, okay?
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, the lab was heaven. We got a new research assistant. The research assistant that joined us, like the last one, she baked, Richie. She literally baked. She baked us cakes, fancy ass cakes, and she brought them to the lab. And we were like, "We love you. You belong here." I mean, I didn't cook, but I brought my part. I brought chips and all that, all the unhealthy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chocolate, chips, coffee, cookies.
Anyway, the patients.
Yeah. Do you think Laurence brought snacks to the lab?
I think he probably did, but other people weren't allowed to have them. He would have been one of those people. He has like his food's all labeled like "don't touch."
Yeah.
And he goes out to get coffee, but he only gets it for himself. He doesn't ask if anyone else wants one.
Wow, Laurence.
Yeah.
Wow.
Imagine you working for the healing church. Then you're like sitting there and then like a werewolf runs past the door, or like someone with like a bag on their head screaming, and you're just like,
Something's going on here. Oh my god, if I worked in that lab, I would be stressed 24/7.
Oh, really?
Because I'd be doing ethics, and I'm like, so you want me to write in this form that we will literally pour squids and seawater into people's brains? Laurence, I don't know about that. I don't know if I can do that.
He's just like, I'm so sick of all this red tape.
Yes.
Anyway, the clock tower patients.
I'm still stressed about imagining doing ethics for this project.
Who would you be reporting them to?
The amygdala.
Yeah.
Laurence is like, hey, can you ask the amygdala whether or not it's okay to have 2 experimental groups and no control group? And just, we inject seawater, old blood, slugs, worms. Just ask. And I'd be like, I think I know the answer. No, ask. And I'd be calling the amygdala being like, listen, Laurence doesn't want a control group. Yeah, no placebo, just experimental everything.
Yeah.
And injecting, no, we're not injecting medication. We're injecting seawater, slugs, parasites, old blood. That's a no? Okay, well, I just have to ask. You know how it is. Okay, thanks. Laurence, it's a no. Oh my god.
Laurence, on your experimental group, you've just written everyone.
Yes. Like the number of your participants that you're going to have, you wrote Yarnum. God. Okay, so.
Okay. So,
Back on track.
yes.
Yeah. So could you describe the various patients we run into?
Okay, so the basic patient is someone, like a human who is wearing would you call it like a gown? Like a hospital
Yeah.
gown kind of thing? And their head is encased in a series of like bandages, like they have a big sack over their head, and their heads are all massively distended, like they're much bigger
Hmm.
than, like they're sort of like the size of their torso.
Yeah.
They come in different head sizes, and they just sort of like when we arrive in the research hall, it looks like the patients have sort of like they're escaping, like they're mutinying, and they've overthrown the church. So they're sort of pacing around. Um, some of them are static, some of them are wandering around, and then we get into like there's different kinds of patients, which is when this starts getting a bit complicated. So there's the kind I just described, which is just a person with a distended head who wanders around.
Hmm.
There's also ones where the patient is bound up, like they're tied, their body is tied up. It's like a straitjacket kind of thing. And they can't move their arms or their legs, so as a result, they're lying on the ground and they move like a slug or like a worm. They sort of slither.
Hmm.
Um, those ones also have tentacles that come out of their throats and try to grab you.
Hmm.
And they sort of like they're not brain sucker tentacles. They're just like they. It's notable that they come out of the throat instead of the head because that's where we know like the vermin are. So it's maybe like they're developing a thirst for blood, and they
Hmm.
sort of lash around at you. They don't really try to grab you. They just sort of like hit you.
Hmm.
Then there's ones that have one of their hands is incredibly, it's sort of like we talked about with the church giants, where like one of their hands is massive and swollen and it's covered in like cysts and there's all this goo coming out of it. They try to grab you with that hand, and if it touches you it will infect you with poison.
Hmm.
Then there's ones that do not have heads. They're just headless ones wandering around.
Hmm.
Then there's ones that are just the heads, which I think is like they were probably one person originally. Those heads are, it's similar to what Adeline becomes, and they look like the non-hostile ones that say like plip plop drip drop, but they have the same tentacles that the ones on the ground have, only obviously they come out of their head because they don't have a throat,
Hmm.
and they can inflict you with frenzy.
Hmm.
And they also have a chance to drop Madman's knowledge. So that they're, I guess, like there's sort of semi-successful experiments because they're starting to get in contact.
Hmm.
Then there's ones that walk around on all fours like a beast, and they actually, I think they just copied and pasted the Scourge Beast animations onto them because they crawl around and they leap at you and things like a Scourge Beast does. And those ones, although the game doesn't count them as a beast for damage purposes. If you throw a pungent blood cocktail, they will chase the cocktail.
Hmm.
And then the final kind is there is a very, very tall one that is still attached to like a drip. And they will use the
Hmm.
drip as a weapon. They'll try to bash you with it. And then there's also one, it doesn't look any different, but it has the arcane attacks that the Celestials have, where they make the little like starbursts appear around their heads and they fire lasers at you. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of them.
And the really tall ones, they make me think of Thumerians.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wonder if whatever they're injecting people with is giving them sort of Thumerian looks. What do you think?
It might just be that like the people in Yharnam are all very tall anyway.
Okay, yeah.
This is something that we've talked about, but like one of the things about the From third person games is that
Hmm.
they tend to make characters you're going to fight with about a head taller than you.
Right.
Just because if it's in third person and your character is taking up the bottom of the screen, if the
Hmm.
character you're fighting is taller than you, it makes them easier to see.
Hmm. Richie,
Yes, Sin.
Why are you laughing, Richie?
I don't know. I don't know. No one will ever know because it won't be on the in the
Yeah.
episode. Yeah. Thank you, Richie. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And then there's an abrupt change in tone.
Yes. So, Richie, you mentioned there was mutiny. Could you elaborate?
So when you go into the research hall, the first thing you notice is the patients are all out of the rooms, like they're just wandering around. And like there's dead healing church bodies all over the place, including a couple that have hunter stuff on them, which implies that like, hunters were in here as well. They were killed by the patients. The most obvious sign of conflict you see is when you see a whole lot of healing church patients. They run up the spiral stairs, and there's a blood minister at the top with a Gatling gun who's shooting them to try to like keep them away from him. So it looks, and like if you listen to the ones that can talk, they're all saying like, free me from this place, let me out, I'm going mad. So clearly, like the patients all rebelled and like,
Well, not all. One of them was like, "Hey, can you help me find my eyes?"
yeah. Well, you don't know what's going to happen when she finds her eyes.
What's gonna happen?
She's going to be like, okay, now it means business. She's going to start beating even more of them up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So basically the patients are revolting because I guess the healing church isn't treating them too well. Huh.
Now, why do you think that is? Why do you
Little
think that might be?
misrepresentation there.
Oh,
On
yeah.
the healing church, more like the bullying church.
Is this covering where? Or if we just
No,
given up on this having an outline?
no, we're talking. We're still at the what.
Okay.
Um, so one of the Adeline items.
Bonjour, Adeline.
Bonjour Adeline, comment allez-vous aujourd'hui? Mentions that Maria would take her to the garden.
Oh no, it doesn't. It doesn't say she took her there. It says she gave her the key to the garden because she thought she'd open the door and smell the flowers.
Wait. So Maria didn't even take her to the garden?
Maybe she doesn't have the authority to take her to the garden. I mean, she's largely strapped to a chair. She probably couldn't go to the garden if she wanted to.
So in my head, because of this description, I just pictured Maria taking like patients to the garden, so it's nice.
Yeah, she might have.
Okay.
They are patients in the garden. Yeah.
So maybe the healing church wasn't all bad.
Have you seen the patients in the garden?
I don't remember. Are
They
they
have
very
bags.
happy?
No.
Oh God. What? They have bags of candy?
They have bags on their heads, and they're frantically scrambling around in the ground trying to find slugs.
Okay, so Maria, my opinion of you is quickly changing. I thought you took him to the garden for some outing time, not to search for slugs.
No. She wasn't. She was trying to be nice to Adeline.
Okay, all right.
She gave Adeline the key because she thought if Adeline was like near the garden, the scent of the flowers would like calm her. She didn't physically take her there though.
It's a little.
And then Adeline doesn't understand why she was given the key, so she doesn't ever go there.
Yeah. So Adeline is strapped to a fucking chair with a bunch of needles in her, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Thanks for the ski, Maria. It helps a lot. Helps a lot, Maria. Thank you." And Maria's like, "You're welcome. I'm so happy I could help."
Thank you, Adeline. Okay.
Okay, bye. See ya in the garden. Adeline just like rolling her eyes.
Is that enough of what?
Yes. Where are they, Richie?
They're in the research hall.
They're
They're in the rooms that they're in are like there'll be like one kind of patient for each room, so you can see the different experiments they're doing.
Mhm.
Because like some people don't notice this, but if you go up to the doors in the research hall, you get an interact prompt, and it'll actually say like this is room like floor 3, room B, or something like that.
Mhm.
And you can see like okay, there's one room with that are just the heads. There's one room that's just the ones that act like beasts. There's one room that's like got the infected guy in it. things like that. So yeah, it's like all broken up.
Okay.
And yeah, and then like there's those ones, and then there's the ones in the garden that have the celestial arcane stuff going on, but they're only outside. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Richie. And why are the patients?
I think that was covered in what? That like the Healing Church got a bunch of people and started injecting water into them, into their brains, and then their heads got bigger and bigger, and some of them started to make contact with the Great Ones, and most of them went mad and died. And then the ones that behave like beasts, they are in a room that is locked apart from the top. And when you go in from the top, there's like all these beast blood pellets at the top of the ladder, and there's like it's directly below the room with all the blood ministers in it. So I think pretty clearly they're getting across that like the blood ministers were developing beast blood pellets, and they were testing them on the people in the room below who are locked away because they're dangerous.
So Richie, what do you think is the reason for the patients having those huge heads?
Is that a joke question? Or?
No, it's a real question. Why did their heads
specifically because the Healing Church are injecting them with water? That's what it says.
I think there's another reason.
Go on.
So, as you may imagine, it was a vision. So the Healing Church injected them with whatever, and the patients started talking to Great Ones. And then they're like, oh my god, I can talk to Great Ones. I am so much better than everybody else. And their ego inflated and their heads got huge.
This is Laurence trying to explain to Willem what he's doing. Their heads are so massive because they're all communing with Great Ones, unlike you. And he's like taking selfies with them.
Yes, Ingrid.
Even she wants this episode to end.
Okay, Richie, do the outro.
That was What We're Why Enemies of Bloodborne, episode 48. The Clock Tower Patience.
Thank you, Richie. And thanks for listening, everyone. See y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.